Welcome back to the Security on Happy Hour, where we bring together a group of security professionals and naturally cheery folks to discuss topics in the cybersecurity community, share knowledge, learn, teach, and exchange ideas. Now, before we get started, it's important to point out that the views and opinions expressed on the Security on Happy Hour and related websites are those of the hosts, guests, and authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any one company. In this episode, Lisa Bradley, Katie Noble, CRob, and I are going to talk about how product managers and PSIRTs can work together. And our guest today is Mark Thacker. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yeah, Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool. Hey, again, many-time listener, first-time participant. I am a product manager with about, cringe, 30-ish years of experience in the IT world.
Right out of kindergarten?
Yes, that's exactly when I started CRob. Yes. Anyway, so let's see. I'm in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, but again, I've worked for several large IT industries or IT companies, it's IT vendors, primarily focused in the enterprise software space. I actually started off as like a pre-sales systems engineer. Before that, it was a sysadmin, right? And so in my mind, I'm still like this pre-sales sysadmin guy, but I haven't been that in like forever. I've actually been a product manager for like 20 years now. Primarily, I've been concentrating on security technologies. Again, from a product manager point of view, it's all about how do you build security into products? And we're going to talk about that. So anyway, that's me. And I know I've had a good history here working with CRob, and I'm super excited to be on. This is going to be awesome. I love security stuff.
I'm gonna steal Lisa's thunder a little bit from being the first person to ask a question that's off script and ask you about how, as a product manager, you mentioned just a second ago about your pre-sales experience. How important was that to have that pre-sales experience coming into a product management role?
I'll put it this way. A product manager's main job in life is to ensure that we're addressing customer and market problems, right? Mm-hmm. So you either have to have experience in being a customer and having those problems yourself, or you have to have the experience, and it's best to have the experience of direct interaction with customers trying to solve real world problems. There's a phrase, I'll mention this once because I know we're not endorsing anything, but most product managers follow one of many schools of thoughts about how product management should work. One of the more popular ones is the Pragmatic Marketing Institute. And we'll go down a little side fork tangent in just a minute because the name of Pragmatic Marketing Institute, but I'm a product manager. You know, what's the deal there? Why does it say marketing? But anyway, we'll talk about that. But in any case, part of that school of thought is a product manager is supposed to identify market problems to be solved. How do you do that? One of the ways is, and it's again, their term, not mine, Nihito. Nothing important happens in the office. And that means you've got to go out and visit with customers. You have to actually live in their shoes. You have to have that interactive discussion with them. So when they call up and you get the request, like a product manager does, it says, well, I need this feature, in this version of your product. My immediate and all good product managers' first question should be, why? What problem are you solving? What's the actual market problem behind that? Sounds interesting. What's the market problem? So having that pre-sales experience, that's where I would, be there at the data center at 2 a.m. in the morning, trying to configure the firewall for a customer. They had no idea they even needed a firewall, right? Setting up the backup system for the customer, and then trying to figure out how are they actually going to do their data. Oh, they don't know, have anyone that's actually trained in doing backup and restore. How do we help them with that documentation problem, with that training problem? I think it's pretty important for a good product manager to have that background, pre-sales or direct experience.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So I was wondering, I get confused pretty easy because I don't really do anything. I hear terms like project manager, program manager, and product manager. Could you maybe give me the 30-second, what the hell do these people do spiel, and how are they different?
Yeah, again, all opinions expressed here are those of the guests. There are a lot
So we
of
can beat up on
definitions.
project managers.
No, hey. Well, I'm going to throw another one in there, which is product marketing.
Oh, those people are the worst.
Some of my best friends are product marketers. CRob.
Marketers,
Okay,
yeah.
so I'll give you an opinion about what I see, what my experience has shown. So we'll start with the easy one, which is product management. Beyond being the first person to either say no or it depends, product managers are there primarily to be the interface between the customer and the product team, right? The rest of the product team. And when I say the rest of the product team, I don't mean just engineering, right? Documentation, training, support, customer escalation, customer experience teams, everything else. Oh yeah, by the way, development. The product manager is there to ensure what are the requirements from the market? What are the customer personas that we are dealing with? Take that back into personas. Personas are important. Take that back into the product team. And then you're not done, because the other part of a product manager's job is to then take everything that has been built and actually work with product marketing and work with pre-sales to describe out to the customers, hey, here's this bag of Legos, and it can do these really cool, neat things for you to solve these business problems that you have, right? It isn't sufficient to just say the kernel runs 30% faster. So what? Right? So product manager is there to be the representative of the customer to the product team. The product manager is there to establish priorities based on market problems, because ideally you should not be spending time as top priority on problems that are not pervasive, persistent, there's strong market evidence for, and quite frankly, people will pay for it. If the problem that you're working on isn't in that space, it's okay, right? Maintenance, right? People don't think about paying for maintenance, but they do. But that's not the primary job of a product manager. Our job is to identify those market problems that fit into that kind of classification I just talked about. Okay, so interface with customers, interface with engineerings. Great, because you have to talk two totally different languages constantly, right? So maybe I could go on. Let me pontificate a little bit more, because I like doing that. You mentioned project management. So to me, my experience with project management is project management typically is designed to take a smart-oriented goal, right? A specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound goal. I know all the buzzwords. To take these kind of goals for a specific deliverable or implementation and take that across the finish line. Now, project managers are also multidisciplined because they have to deal with a variety of groups within a product team, like same sorts of team members that you might deal with as a product manager. But they can also be sort of hidden inside of, say, engineering, right? Or they can be hidden inside of even a PSIRT as a project. I know, right? Project manager. Now, the thing about project managers are they're awesome at getting the job done, right? They are there executing against plans. And we love all project managers. Thank you so much. That's what I think of a project manager. So a product manager and a project manager are a little bit different. A product manager is focused on, at the end of the day, and it sounds kind of chintzy, we've got a product to deliver, right? That's not a project. A product is this ongoing set of experiences that customers deal with every day. It's not just I'm trying to think of a good project. Rolling out, you've got a particular vulnerability you need to deal with. You have to make sure that everything is up to date across all of your applications. A project manager can go and help make sure that occurs. That's awesome. Product manager is going to say, yep, vulnerability, done. Let's go back and make sure that the life cycle is complete, that we understand if it's realistic to patch old versions of our operating system, for example. That's more the product manager space.
More task-oriented or specific, sort of bound activities, right?
That's what I think of as project management. Yeah.
Right.
Now the project managers that are out there are probably yelling at their screens right now. Again,
Mark.
I see. You also asked about program management, didn't you? Yes.
I did.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
I get confused, remember?
I know. No, you don't. Okay. Program management is the heart and core of those long-lived, continuous set of requirements that typically a product team or a company needs to respond to. I'll give you a good example. Government certification programs, common criteria, FIPS, compliance standards, right? PCI DSS, internal implementation standards, right? Like FedRAMP. Ooh, FedRAMP.
I've heard of it.
I've heard of FedRAMP. I've heard of FedRAMP. Program managers are excellent at making sure that these never-ending tasks are always completed. So what's their interaction with a product manager? A product manager is likely to say, we're looking at my market problems. I'm creating a product and I have customers that want to use that product in a FedRAMP environment. So now I need to work with that program manager that handles FedRAMP to ensure that what we are building, because remember, product managers work in the building team, can be used in a FedRAMP environment. In other words, by the way, I've had many customers come to us in my current role, and they've said, I use open source project XYZ. I want to go deal with customers that require FedRAMP. And turns out this open source project doesn't have government certifications.
No.
So they come to us in my company and they're like, hey, what can I do to become FedRAMP compliant? Now I always sigh. And then, we have the conversation about the program management team and how they're going to be the ones that are going to solve your problem. So I think of program management as being ideal at executing these longer term, never ending set of requirements. And again, I've typically run into program management when it comes down to certifications and continuously repeating never ending set of requirements. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah. Now I say all that, and then I want to know what everyone else thinks. And then I'm going to talk about product marketing too, but I'm sorry, someone else was saying.
No, I was just going to say it's interesting, although we're focusing more on who works on the product, within a PSIRT, you can have product managers and program managers and project managers, all three.
Yes, you can.
It is as we look at the different ones. So I often have to think that when I'm hiring for a role, which one is it and how do they, fall into it? But you have one more to go, and then I of course I have a question for you.
Okay, cool. So product marketing. So the other thing that I have seen some confusion about is, well, there's product managers, and aren't they just product marketing? The answer is no. Product marketing is a super important thing, right? It is super important because product marketing's purpose in life is to help to describe to the customers the value of what's being brought to the market. That could be a product, but in the case of a PSIRT, that could be, here's what we are doing, say, in our process for our life cycle, right? Here's why we're making these life cycle changes to our products. That's not a product itself, but if I don't communicate that clearly, the market will interpret what you deliver to them in any way that they happen to, if you don't give them any other context for it. If you don't help them solve that problem mentally about, I get how this can go and solve my day in, day out, butt in seat problem that I have. That's what product marketing helps them do. Otherwise, the customer will make up something, right? Or your competitor will, or maybe not your competitor. They'll interpret it in the context by which they are seeing the world, right? Product management works with product marketing, and typically product management is there, remember, liaisoning with the core engineering team. So we have to take the spec list that engineering has done, again, based on market problems, and work with the product marketing team to say, here's where this is going to go help solve some real problems, right? Firewall is 30% faster. So that means more connections per second. That means your bill is lower if your workload is the same. That means I can handle a bigger workload, which means I don't have to spend so much money in the cloud or on my CPUs. These are all things that you might just conclude, but unless you actually have that relationship between product management and product marketing working together as a team, it can break down, right? In the group I'm in now, as a matter of fact, we actually have a technical marketing team, a technical marketing member, a product marketing manager, and a product manager working together in what we call a pod. And we design the roadmap together. We design the messaging that goes along with it. We set the priorities together. And then the product manager works directly with the product owner and the engineering side to make sure that the product's actually being built.
It's
Thank
funny.
you.
I think of the product marketing, and I'm like, we have a love-hate relationship with them. I remember at one company I was working with, they wanted to change our security bulletins or advisories and add in the feature updates into it because they didn't like the negativity of saying that we had vulnerabilities. I did not do that. But then I get nervous. So when they're promising the world of like how a product can best protect against some of the security things like ransomware, and I was like, you just put like a bullet on our back here. But we could go into a whole nother story in that. But we're coming off of Log4j. That was and all I keep on, it's a thing, and I keep thinking about we never waste a good crisis, and for me, customers were a main part of the conversation here. So right now, every product manager should know about security in some way because customers were talking about Log4j and being protected against it. And so now while we're on this wave here where the customers have the product manager's attention, as a PSIRT focus or security focus, what's the best way to work with the product managers to say, okay, you hear the customer's importance about security, and we need to do some things with this product to have better practices in security, like security update cadence, end of security support, like you mentioned earlier, or maybe security updates only without features in it. Those are sometimes a lot of customer asks. So what's the best way that we should go about partnering right now with product managers to be able to push our incentives that we see would make sense to the product?
Yeah, good question, Lisa. Basically, how do you ensure the product manager will pay attention to what's actually what you're seeing as problems, right?
Right.
I'll go back to what I talked about earlier, which is product managers, no matter what philosophy they subscribe to, are always supposed to be working from the basis of market and or customer problems. There's language that you use to describe what is that market problem, right? It isn't sufficient, for example, for a product manager to say, well, I want to have good security, or the opposite, I want to have 0 CVEs, right? Those are not. You've seen this, right? You've seen the requirements from customers, right? No known vulnerabilities. It's the unknown ones that you have to worry about, my friends.
If we don't know, then
if
we're
I
good,
don't
right?
know about
I
it.
fulfilled that requirement. Oh, check.
So ignorance
Done.
is bliss is what I'm hearing.
Amen
Yes.
to that.
Until it's in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
No known and no knowns.
So to Lisa's question, I think, real world example, when I have engineers that come with either an idea that they've already started working on or an idea they think is interesting, I have to work with them and the product owner, for example, to explicitly write up what is the market problem that we're solving here, right? So Log4j is really interesting, but what's the market problem that's associated with Log4j? Is it a supply chain market problem? Or is it a software life cycle market problem? Which sounds, by the way, little aside, when I say market problem, you should also immediately think that means not in terms of beneficial to the vendor. That's not the language in which you write market problems. Market problems have to be written in the language of, I am a customer, right? I am a persona. I have this problem to solve in order to get this result.
Right.
It has
So,
nothing to do with your vendor at all.
I am a customer that's on not the latest version, but the one before, and I know that it has log4j. When are you going to update that log4j version to not have the vulnerability in that version? So there's where the life cycle part comes in, right?
Yeah. I would probably phrase it a little bit differently, but that's basically it.
Oh, did I fail?
I am a customer who has an older stable release of an operating system. I need to ensure that it is patched and updated to the latest security standards within a reasonable time period. And I need to know that it has a defined endpoint upon which it will no longer be receiving security updates in order to manage my software inventory appropriately and reduce my risk.
I love it. I'm totally stealing that.
all day long,
It's
man.
been recorded.
I was going to say, I wish we had recorded that.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, we're doing this on the fly, but you see how that's a little bit different than I have this log4j. No, log4j is just an instance, right? What's the market? What's the actual market problem that you're trying to solve? So with log4j, there is a very strong supply chain and lifecycle component to log4j. Yeah.
And that's really important to keep customers focused on, and even internally, right? We don't want to get caught up in the one incident, right? Let's figure out what the bigger concern is or the bigger need is for our customers and solve that.
Right.
Be holistic about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's perfectly correct. Yeah, especially in the enterprise software space, because in the enterprise software space, you tend to find customers that want to run. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, it turns out it's all broke. It's just a matter of they know what the brokenness is and they find a way to work around it. So don't change their life, and so they will run with it forever. Right? There are literally satellites running old versions of operating systems. Right? There are rovers on Mars running. I don't know, how many times have you patched the kernel on the Mars rover? I don't know, not that frequently, right? So you have these long-term enterprise class, highly reliable cash cow opportunities that has a significant impact on the software and support lifecycle, which has a huge impact on security errata and how customers deal with security, right? And they need to know very clearly what the risks are in advance. Customers hate ambiguity. Just tell them what you're going to do. Tell them what you're not going to do. They're fine with that. Customers are okay. And I will say this, I know customers are listening. We're on product teams here, but from a PSIRT perspective, I would say your experience may differ, but if you tell a customer in advance what the expectations are, and then you say, I'm not going to be able to fix that issue, I'm not saying it's always great, but you can always point back to, we talked about this, it's on this life cycle. And I've had great conversations with customers who were saying, well, actually, I'm kind of glad that you're not fixing this because I need to move to the latest version of my application. I need to move to a newer version of operating system. And this is yet even more reason why I need to move to it.
Yeah. Well, I think what you were saying, though, about setting the expectation, like that's where I think of the security, like I call it security update cadence, but like that patch Tuesday type of thing. As a customer, right, of Microsoft, you know when you're going to get that and you could be prepared. And so customers want to know so they could be prepared because they have their own time frame of how quickly they need to address or pick up that update based on what security fixes are in there and the severity of them. So that's how I usually talk about it in that way. Yeah.
Very cool.
Katie, you're a little quiet. I'm sure you have a question. Putting you on the spot, because if not, I'll ask another one.
No, I'm just quietly listening. I guess one of the questions that I have is, we talk a lot about the different pieces, and I just wondered if you go a little bit further into like how do product managers, there we go, work kind of more directly with product security incident response PSIRT teams.
Sure. Yeah, with PSIRT teams. Yeah, sure. Again, I'll give my experience. So any bad experiences I have, I blame CRob for.
Yes.
Yes. So
I was
good question. Product managers in many ways are, by the way, in case you don't know, I mean, I know we're all overworked, but if you look at the industry stats, I'm going to get this wrong because it changes over time. But in terms of, say, engineers or quality engineers to product manager ratio, it's bad. There's very few product managers to handle the number of engineers that we have to deal with. It's typically, well, okay, someone's going to do research. This is recorded, so now I'm screwed. Instead of like, say, maybe a 30-to-1 ratio, most product managers have 150-to-1, 250-to-1
wow.
ratio. Yeah. Yeah. As the security product manager within the organization that I'm within, if you counted all the engineers, I think I was probably at about a 300-to-1 ratio. So they're sort of resource starved. Now I say all that, and I'll go back to your question, Katie, around how do we work with the PSIRT? Product managers view PSIRTs, at least I do, as being both a fount of knowledge. They are the technical experts, and PSIRTs have a sense. PSIRTs have a sense of timing and importance to the issues they're dealing with. Those are all inputs to a product manager, right? Now that's inputs into future development, enhancements, changes, et cetera. What I have seen in the life cycle of products that I've been working on is with the PSIRT gets involved in my opinion, in multiple places. One, new input, new technology acquisition, new project development. Involve the PSIRT in early on to do design review, architecture review. Does this meet the standards for the organization? Are we following and documenting our coding standards that we're using, right? All that upfront design work that you did. Passwords are a good thing. Let's try to use them. They also get involved in the review of how the project itself is actually managed, right? Now, a product manager doesn't typically go out of their way to say, oh, I want you to use, GitHub, or I want you to use this source code control repository system. Most product managers, I don't think, get involved in that because that's an implementation decision. However, as a representative of the product team, often product managers get involved in that discussion about how is that project being managed from an open source perspective, from a closed source perspective. What are we doing to ensure that the security paradigms of development, AKA, your secure development lifecycle. Oh, SDLC, did I mention SDLC? What are we doing to ensure that SDLC is something that we actually practicing, right? And the product manager cares about that because that becomes a priority. We're constantly making priority decisions and priority trade-offs. PSIRT is a huge input to that. That life cycle that we talked about earlier, security life cycle, there's a huge overlap there. With PSIRTs, I find, PSIRTs have the immediate knowledge on what is the impact of this particular vulnerability, what is the impact on what we're seeing now, which is new standards for security, such as the White House executive order in the US, right? PSIRTs are the super knowledgeable ones. What? Look at that. I've seen that text. There you go. I've read that text to fall asleep. That then plays into the product manager's role on a regular meeting where you're talking about the life cycle of your product, how long is it going to be, receiving the security errata, security updates? And then what risk are you willing to take in order to address some of these security updates and security issues, right? As a risk management philosophy, it may not be better to go backwards in time, and the product manager knows this about the product, and address a 10-year-old version of your product. You may actually be creating more problems than that. That becomes a risk trade-off discussion that is not solely in the hands of the implementer to do. That's exactly where PSIRT, product management, and the third triad, development, if you will, sometimes support, all have to fit in to make that decision on.
Well,
How do
I
we
say
address
even
this?
marketing is in there.
Yeah,
'Cause
it does.
marketing and sales, because there's the ones who tend to
Yep.
over promise, on some things.
Yeah,
Never seen sales.
that's a
over
communication
promise.
things. Yeah, well, okay. I love my salespeople that I work with. But let's flip that on the positive side. They're also the ones that have the most immediate knowledge on what's actually deployed at the customer site and the potential impact for it. And
Yes.
oftentimes, whereas product managers might think, oh, I suspect that this is going to be a major problem for customers, you go and talk to sales and it turns out they're like, well, that system's locked down. It wouldn't matter if there's a security problem with that. What I mean by lockdown, sorry, in this context, it may not make much sense. That system is, in an unchangeable state. We are not touching that system. The customer has a large SAP deployment. They're not going to touch that. It doesn't matter what the security problem is. So as a product manager, I learned that and go, oh, okay, well, it's maybe I don't need to, maybe that's not going to be a big deal. Turns out that I can address it in the next release of the product. And in fact, that will actually handle the customer problem. So sales should have intimate knowledge of their customers and should be able to give you better guidance as a product manager and as a PSIRT team, right? Product marketing is super important there because, like you said, either the message can be incorrectly communicated or it's an opportunity to communicate it in a way that makes a lot more sense, right?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I think of too, and is just with security is quality. Like if I could usually say, product managers care about quality and security is a quality aspect to it. Sometimes I utilize that too. And it helps because as you say, you work with how many quality engineers all the time, right? And so just relating it to that, that's my last thought I think I have of the day.
So one thing I was going to add some additional context on this. I've been trying to keep my statements here around product management. I'm talking about product management in general. And CRob and I, we worked quite closely together because I was, a security product manager for a particular product, right? But imagine that if you're not the security product manager, like you don't live, breathe, and eat security all the time, right? So you're a product manager for a database, you're a product manager for some other application, you're a product manager for a cloud-based service. Security becomes one of those quality things that you then have to integrate in with the rest. Sometimes you have to help a product manager who doesn't, if you say the word FIPS, they're going to go, huh? Or if you mention CVE or
kind of training and partnering to help explain
that
perspective.
Yeah,
that's one of the approaches we're making right now is doing security training just for product managers so that they could understand and bring in the customer ask into that so they could understand the role a little bit more because it may be new to a lot of them. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's far more product managers that are not security-based product managers that focus on product security, specifically security attributes. So
I don't know what they're missing. Security is the best.
But even those product managers that are not based on security or focused on security solely, there's a need for a relationship between product managers and PSIRTs so that we can better inform the customers and better meet the needs of the customers. And it allows us to have I'd say a litmus test for the decisions that we make in dealing with risk associated with product security issues by having that conduit, that sort of heartbeat that goes into not just one customer, but a whole suite of customers that can bring back information to us and allow us to make better decisions along the way. because as we know, right, every security vulnerability is unique, and every decision that we make, every situation that we deal with, we can follow guidelines that we develop, but the need to have the pulse of the customer is really critical. And this is where I think you really come in. So I think this is really important and vital for those that are listening to our podcast and are gaining a better understanding of what PSIRTs do. It's good to understand that we have this relationship with the product teams, from engineering to the product management roles, so that
The VPs and
the
all
VPs,
them
right? Yeah.
watching,
Right. We have a lot of
watching over us,
stakeholders, right? And it's
doing the
really-
reporting. Yeah.
But the customer is at the core of this, right? Ultimately,
Yes.
that's who we're really reaching out to touch. Everybody else that we work with, you're all important, but the customer is really our primary stakeholder in everything that we do. So, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing this with our listeners and with us, because I think it's a good reminder of what we need to be focused on as we make these decisions around different security vulnerabilities. So thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Great to see
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate having me on.
Look forward to seeing everybody next time.